Hey, welcome to another episode of the Jazz for Peace podcast. We are going to have a very interesting guest. His name is Matthew Carauddo. It's interesting because when I looked at all the things he does, I saw something that brought me to a Brazilian dance called capoeira, because I played a lot of Brazilian music and I played in Brazilian bands. And this is where it's kind of like fighting, but it's also dancing. And Matthew was a fencer, but he was also a choreographer. So when I see fencing and choreography, I almost see a capoeira in a different language. So that was my site. Matthew's going to tell me whether I was onto something or where this thought was coming from. And we're just excited to bring into the show a very exciting guest. Please welcome from DiamondDragons.com, Matthew Carauddo, and I hope I'm saying that last name right.
No, you nailed it. It's great. Thank you.
Great.
And thank you for having me aboard the show. It's a pleasure to be here. I love doing these kinds of things. And just to kind of give a quick background, because I don't want to sit here and go blah, 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 blah about my stuff. My kind of background is 30 plus years collectively in like production. And what I mean by that is things like acting, directing, sound design, fight choreography, martial arts, fencing, voiceover, just all of the kinds of aspects that you would expect, graphics and video editing that go into, again, production in general, not necessarily theater only, but that's the biggest focus I ever kind of did. Most of it was always live for the most part. But I also did many years of videos, which of course I uploaded to sites like YouTube and so on. As soon as the site was available back in, I want to say it was late 2005 and early 2006. But yeah, I have a strong background in martial arts. I'm nothing super high level Jackie Chan style or anything like that. But I've always been involved in that kind of stuff and always loved training yourself in a way where you're like, this is legitimate. Like the punch that I'm throwing into this bag or whatever it is that you're doing is legitimate. Like this would do some damage, or this, spinning kick, or even just, basic actions. And understanding martial technique has always been a lot of not only fun for me, but it's a great way to keep yourself in shape. And so, Rick, just to kind of transition to that, I not only studied fencing for many, many years, but then I began teaching at this academy when the maestro just meaning the master of the academy, said, you seem to be here often, you love the classes and you work well with kids and the adults love it, and da, 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 da. Did you ever think of teaching? And I was like, not really, not specifically to fencing, but I'm like, I've taught before. And he said, well, you should consider it. And then, years later, kind of that's, I started actually teaching at this academy, and things kind of snowballed from there. I got more and more involved in doing choreography for different shows around the area that I was in. And I'm basically from the San Jose, San Francisco, California Bay Area. That isn't the limit of where I choreograph, but I mean, that gives people at least an idea. And I'd kind of been, working in theatrical productions before that. So I was already doing like choreography or sometimes fight moves or just something for in a show or whatever, depending on the roles. But it kind of sort of leveled up from there when suddenly, someone from Half Moon Bay calls, oh, we want you to do 12th Night. I'm like, oh, I would love to do that. There's so much sword fighting in that. And there's so many great moments, especially with the character who is pretending to be a man, and all this cool stuff, and, hiding her identity, and suddenly, oh, now they find out. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of, hopefully that will give people some of my background. But if they want to learn more, they can just visit. I hope my fingers are not being erased by the green screen.
Yeah, it's back there. Yeah, when you go to that website, make sure you type in diamond, then a dash, then dragons.com. I just, I just love the correlation. Also, I mean, you've gone from fencing into a lot of activities that some people might think of LA, not so much San Francisco. I see some of the things that you've, done, illustration and voiceover and things like that. And, and you've done it all in the Bay Area, which is interesting.
For the most part, there was a brief time from around, I want to say it was 2016 to super early 2020, really like 2016 to 2019, where I was in the LA area. Basically, I was in near the Anaheim area is the best way to say it. So near Disneyland of all places. And I won't go into all the details about, why I moved there. But the point is, yeah, I was doing some stuff there. That's kind of when I was developing Diamond Dragons, and what I started with was a screenplay version of Diamond Dragons. It's all I really wanted to do is transition away from all the other live projects that I did, which was all Star Wars related, which again, people can visit the website and learn about that. They'll be like, wait, what? Live Star Wars lightsaber events? What the hell? That's what I used to do. And then I was like, I want to see if I
And
can.
that's related to your saber, right? Nova Star?
Right. That's correct. Yeah. I did.
Saber-esque related.
I basically.
There.
Yeah. I basically then kind of transitioned to that back in around 2004 and 5. I was thinking about what would it be like to do a live lightsaber performance on stage, bright sabers, hardcore, like what would it be like? And at that time, it really wasn't that plausible because the technology just wasn't there. So long story short, I kind of pushed for that, kind of got involved in these communities. Sabers were getting better. I was learning how to build them myself. A gentleman named Joe Muniz, who went by Corbin Doss, not Corbin Dallas, but Corbin Doss. He helped me learn all this kind of stuff. Long story, but anyway, I did that stuff for many years, and I not only performed these shows all around the Bay Area at different conventions and whatnot, but I would teach workshops. We would do youth camps and classes, do classes for adults. I even in 2000, I want to say it was, I don't remember exactly the year range, but 2011, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there, I was teaching at Google, of all places, Google headquarters, just to teach some of their people, whoever wanted to come, lightsaber kind of choreography classes. Keep them moving, keep them active, and exercise. And that was a lot of fun. What a crazy experience it was working at Google, but it was quite an experience. So yeah, that was all the stuff that I did before. But then around 2018 to 2019 is where I was developing the screenplay version of Diamond Dragons. And that takes a long time, especially what I was trying to do, which Diamond Dragons is essentially, or at least the first story, the first book or screenplay, if you will, is essentially like a Lord of the Rings-esque story, only all the characters are essentially dragons. So you can imagine it like, wow, what would it be like if there was a planet in some, way distant solar system, or just one that's not even in this universe, is a different universe, and the planet was mainly inhabited by dragons as opposed to humans or whatnot, so there's sort of an intelligent group, right? They have their share of experiences, triumphs and tragedies, magic and music and all these kinds of things.
What time does it take? Is it a past time or a future time?
So I specifically don't make that clear to the reader for several reasons, which I won't go into here because it might ruin some things, but not really.
Yeah.
But the point is that like they're living on a planet that is far larger than Earth. In fact, I compare it closer to, I say Saturn and Jupiter, which are like many times larger than Earth. So the scale at which people would have to wrap their minds around it, they'd be like, damn, that's right. Like if Earth was still Earth, but it was as big as Jupiter, do you have any idea how long it would take for you to get from California to Japan? It could take like a week flying, you know what I mean? Like very fast, so
this planet where the dragons are on in Diamond Dragons, it's bigger than the Earth?
Correct. That's what I'm trying to say. And
wow.
And also that's kind of the thing is, in a way you get a what's the right word for it? Almost in a secondary or tertiary way, you'll get little tiny bits of science kind of floating into your head, because if you didn't already know that Earth isn't exactly large when you compare it to the other planets in our own solar system, then once I compare the fact that this Dragon's planet is close to the size of Jupiter and Saturn, and that they have barely explored the entirety of their own planet, it sort of starts to sneak into your mind that they're like, wow, I never really thought about like how small we really, really, truly are. Like, damn, I never considered it, and especially the case with these dragons are, of course, larger than what we would be as humans, right? We can imagine that maybe a dragon might be the size of like a pretty damn large room, maybe a house, but you kind of understand what I'm saying, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of thematic underpinnings going on throughout my series, and the best way for people to find out is just to experience it. It might not be for them, but if they like anything that's like Lord of the Rings esque, heroes' journeys like Star Wars, The Matrix, Harry Potter. I'm trying to think of some other ones that are really good examples. I don't know, but there's plenty of them out there. Heroes'
Sure.
journeys. Um, uh, it would be something that people might find themselves enjoying, especially if they like dragons. Duh, match.
Right. Well, now
Yeah,
these books you're doing now,
sure.
you're literally dragons fighting, right? Are people fighting too, or what's the dragons?
Right. Well, not to. I don't think it's really a spoiler for me to tell people that
Right.
mankind isn't involved in the Diamond Dragon's tales, but there are other characters that will come. That's a good way of saying it. That's a good way of saying it. But yes, so I not only tried to make it where it's like, okay, if the dragons were fighting, I understand that for most people they just think dragon breathing fire, the end, and that's it. But from my perspective, not only do the dragons each have varying powers, some
Mhm.
of them breathing ice, or not breathing ice, they spit ice, I guess is the better way of saying it, or acid, or poison, or electricity, whatever. There's a whole bunch of different things. Some of them don't have the ability to fire streams at all. And
Okay.
so there's a whole bunch of different aspects to it. However, all of them, as you can imagine, they'd have massive claws. So it would be like, right, if I took a giant rake, Rick, and the rake was actually tines of death, and I just went and, swung at you, you'd be in big trouble. Not only that, they use their tails as like giant whips and like tail bashing. They can just crush your skull with one snap. Their wings not only can be used to parry and to deflect things, but probably to, I could slap you with my wing, just be like, right into the face. So I tried to employ a lot of martial ideas and concepts throughout while I'm sitting there typing all the, the words and the sentences, so that people kind of had to envision like, oh, that's awesome. He sort of twirls in a helical acrobatic thing, and then bam. So there's all sorts of those. I don't go too deep into that because I don't want to sit there and describe a fight scene for too long. I think that's actually counterproductive. But I try to make it clear that the dragons are not just simply using ranged attacks. When they get close in, it's like what you were just talking about, like wrestling or whatnot. They're going to get in a clutch. Claws are flying and slipping, and wings and tails are bashing. And obviously they have huge jaws, so they could, of course, chomp on something. But the fighting isn't actually even the biggest focus of the storytelling. They're really intelligent overall, even the villains. And what happens, to relate this back to music, Rick, is that at one point, and I don't think I'm really giving too much of a spoiler by saying this. I don't think too many people would find this to be too spoilerific unless they hadn't really started to read too far. Anyway, they come across a piece of music, and it's
Wow.
called Armageddon's Ballad. And at first, people are like, oh, what the hell is all this stuff? And it's like, it's kind of relating to something about the end of the world. Or like, that's how funny as someone, that's nice. But then shortly after, one of their main minstrel or bard dragons is like, hey guys, we need to talk about this. And they're like, what are you talking about? Right. And he's like, so as it turns out, I think it's a little bit more than what we thought. And it's far more serious. So, that makes it interesting storytelling where
That's
people
very
are
interesting.
like, what the hell is Armageddon's ballad or ballad? What the hell is going on? So at that point, the dragons are starting to sweat it and thinking, well, what is this all about? And at first, again, a lot of them are like, I don't think this is this is ridiculous. But later, some even more intelligent dragons, the oceanic dragons of the sea, who are, literally sort of, I don't want to say excommunicated from them, but they live separate lives. They're
Wow.
completely almost on a different planet in a way, because they're 20,000 leagues under the sea, if you will. But
Mhm.
they schedule a meeting, and this is very unlike them. Like they say, we're having a meeting, you all got to be there. And they're like, this is super uncharacteristic. What the hell is this all about? And they're like, so it's confirmed. Like there's some serious trouble brewing, and we need to do something about it. Otherwise, we're all dead as dead. You know?
Well, I think what you've done, and without really revealing a spoiler alert, is simply told our audience, which is, you definitely said the right thing, which is that a major part of your plot or a major turn happens on the discovery of a musical, a musical document, a piece of music.
The very first lines, the very
cool.
first 6 lines of book 1 are actually poetry. And although people will not know it, this is by design. When they first pick up Diamond Dragons 1, they start reading it. The first 6 lines that they read actually will echo all the way throughout books, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They won't even know it. And that's okay, because it's by design. In the first book, you won't even know what in the world is going on. That's super deep and a super deep underpinning of the entire series. But then in 2, a little bit gets more revealed of that, and then you're kind of like, wait a minute, I kind of feel like and then by book 3, if you don't know what's going on, you must be out to lunch completely. But I've also sort of tried to craft the books in a way that if you go back and read one, once you've say read 3 or 4 of the books, you'll be like, oh my God, these things were all there right under my nose the entire time. He was foreshadowing a lot of the stuff. He was leaving little hints. I can't believe this is the same book. They were all there right under my face. And also the illustrations that I've placed in the book, they are all hiding little hints. Well, maybe not all of them, but 90% of the illustrations are hiding some very interesting secrets that only later will make, I don't want to say sense to people, but like only later will be detected. And it also highlights one of the not thematic underpinnings, but sort of, is there's a line that one of the characters says, and actually it gets echoed in other places, but she's teaching this one dragon about some things, and she says, just because you don't see something doesn't mean it isn't there. And then, things are revealed to this dragon. So I'm trying to make that as like one of those little pieces of information, is like, hey, like, just because you don't think that there are other planets out there, or just because you don't like, oh, well, I never saw this thing or whatever, so obviously it doesn't exist. It's like, are you sure about that? like just because you haven't been to Japan doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Are you crazy? So.
And that's interesting, because right now people are just inundated with, gee, I thought this, and now you're telling me it's this, or now I'm finding out it's this, and it's just happening. It's exploding all around us. I mean, everything you thought about this or that has turned to be is becoming upside down.
Yeah, it's when people rely more on their feelings and their beliefs rather than evidence, facts, data, and so forth. And it's something that Carl Sagan, I don't know if our viewers know who that is, but I mean, Carl Sagan warned us about, and I might as well just shout out to a book, not like I need to, Carl Sagan, rip, but people should read The Demon Haunted World. It's not the longest read in the world. It's not super short, but like, I personally believe that every human being 16 and above, let's say, should read it. But it's like, it's better to live your life going off of data, facts, and evidence, rather than being like, well, I believe this. And it's like, really? Do you know why you believe that? Is it because people have been teaching it to you for like 20 years? Are you sure that it's actually based in reality? Or is it just something that you are so strongly convicted about that you will not let it go? You will not let it go. Even if you were presented with like 12 pieces of hardcore evidence, you would still not let it go. That's a dangerous thing,
That's right where we're caught up in right now. We are caught up with people who have these polarizations, and right, people on this side and people on that side, and they won't let them go. So they just keep doubling down into their, and so both sides are out there. And
it's
unfortunate because people get jobs by appealing to one side or the other. So in other words,
or they lose them because of it.
Right? Isn't that crazy? Because it seems to me, I'm like, okay, I see what this guy did. He went over there and got them to give him money by saying he would help them promote their ridiculousness. And this guy went over here. Then this guy got fired from here, and he went over there and said, "Hey, you saw how I sold the other guy. Let me sell your, craziness."
Rick, you and I both know we've been around the block a couple of times. I don't know how old I look or whatever, but I ain't no spring chicken or whatever. But like, charlatans come in many, many forms. However, bravery also comes in many forms. And to quote, I mean, not to quote my own book, but kind of, is that book 3's tagline. Courage is tempered by equivalent mastery over fear.
Wow, right on the cover.
What does that even mean, too? Because I know some people, they'll look at my taglines, so like, your taglines don't make any sense. I'm like, are you sure? Did you look at them closely? But courage is tempered by equivalent mastery over fear. It's kind of like when people say, "Oh, you're so courageous. I would never try a backflip, Matthew." I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, "I'd be too scared." I'm like, you think I wasn't scared when I was going to try? I'm like, are you out of your mind? I'm like, I had to do some of that on stage too, like in front of a live audience. And if I land on my head, this is not good. So, and I can land on my head. It's possible, right? If I fuck up, I got to do it right. So if you think that I'm not scared of doing my objectives, or even when I did all my fencing matches, they'd be like, "Matthew, I don't know how you would compete." I'm like, well, why is that? They're like, I'd be so scared with someone running at me with the sword, even with the helmet on, even with the protection. I'm like, well, I mean, like, you allay your fear with like courage, but at the same time, it doesn't mean the fear doesn't exist. It would be bad, I think, too, if fear didn't exist. It would mean something's wrong. If you're not afraid, something's wrong. It's either too easy for you, right? If you're like, "Oh, I'm not afraid to even try this thing," I'm like, so you already know you can accomplish it. So what the hell are you even trying it for? It's not even a challenge for you. You're not afraid of it because you're not going to lose anything. Nothing is on the line for you, clearly. You know what I mean?
Basically, you're never going to advance unless you cross that line between fear and courage. And very similar to your quote. And I'm glad you brought it up, because Carl Sagan, I know of him from a lot of famous quotes. That man has a lot of people quote him. Is that correct?
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, because I have a famous quote.
Astrophysicist, scientist, philosopher.
Yeah. So what happened is, I had a something I said got lifted off of an article, and it ended up on all the famous quotes websites, which was a godsend for me, because I would see something on Google, my favorite quote, I'd be looking for something under my name, like, when was the last time I played in the Bay Area? Somebody needed the information, and I'd see some guy, my favorite 50 quotes, and then I'd read, he'd had mine on there, but he had 49 other ones, you know what I mean? And so I got to read all of these people's quotes, and I just remember reading a bunch of them by Carl Sagan. I mean, he's been quoted, I'm a one-hit wonder, but that guy has like a lot. He has a Casey Kasem full of quotes.
Well, I mean, he the series that he engineered, Cosmos, was like probably one of the most approachable ways that, like, you would almost say the layman, or just the person who's just not interested in science, could enter science and be and enjoy it. Also, just to touch on the whole entertainment industry thing, is the film Contact, starring Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey, Tom Skerritt. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget the other guy's name because he's fantastic. I lost it. It's okay.
But anyway, lineup right there.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, people can look them all up or whatever. Fantastic. But he wrote the book Contact, and then it was later formulated into a screenplay. So he didn't write the screenplay, but the point is, the book was so fantastic, they were like, we got to make a movie about this. And then it's sad, but Carl Sagan died just essentially before the film was completed, I believe. Wow. I don't remember how far through they were with filming, but certainly it had not been launched into theaters, and I don't know if they had even completed filming. But anyway, it's just too bad that he didn't get to see the film version about his hero's journey character, Ellie Arroway, who the movie Contact is simply about what would happen if we actually were contacted by alien life. And it wasn't just a farce in a Star Wars kind of way, that it was like real Earth, real aliens, real intelligence.
Well, isn't there a lot of buzz around right now about what on Earth is going on with alien life? And I mean, I don't know, where do you stand on that?
I wouldn't know, and part of that is because I think
the Area 51 and all that stuff, right?
Well, I mean, I don't have enough knowledge on that.
That's the thing. We never seem to get that piece of the puzzle that is like, okay, that's a 100% sure thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a good place to speak on that, and also the problem with it is the fact that although some people would believe that, okay, could that really be covered up on a global scale? Wouldn't someone eventually be like, look, we have to tell not just the American public or the Russian public or the Japanese, but we have to tell the globe about this. We can't be hiding these ridiculous secrets. I think that's why it's really difficult. Plus, when you do look at the science, and I'm not trying to say that I believe one way or the other, because obviously if we're looking at things from only the technologies we know, we would look at it and say, well, it's impossible because we can't do it. But that's like saying, oh, well, it's impossible for a human to fly on their own without any apparatus because we know that. And then we see a bird and it's like, no problem. So it's kind of like counterintuitive. We just think of things that if I can't do it, then it can't be possible. But anyway, the point is, though, that when we look at Earth, and we're lucky enough to have the JWST, the James Webb Space Telescope, the JWST, which is unprecedented. This is something that it's just completely blown the lid off of what the tank of information that we had about science has like almost quadrupled or more.
From this one telescope.
Well,
Wow.
I mean, it's more than a telescope, that's for sure. It's literally its own space, not constellation, if you will, but it's out there like Voyager 1, but on, the technology of the 2010 or whatever you want to call it. They've been building it for almost a decade, maybe more. Anyway, when that thing launched in, I want to say it was 2021 or something, but it's out there. I mean, it's collected so much data, but the real issue, though, Rick, is still it's kind of like detecting life. And what I mean by life, when I say life, is okay, for now maybe we'll say microscopic stuff, we'll just put that out of the equation just for now, but like there isn't anything else out there that we can see. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because the universe is so ridiculously large and people cannot comprehend it. It's literally impossible. It's literally like trying to say, when you tell people, do you have any idea how big Jupiter is in comparison to the Earth? And there's no way for them to understand it. But once you try to put it in perspective, even then they'll be like, wow, we're really small. I'm like, that's true. Now think of the universe. And they'll be like, Now,
is that also a planet that's supersonically hot? Is it Jupiter or Saturn?
I don't know about the heat things. And also that it would be, to me, a little bit of a misnomer, because you have to understand that, right? Like there's the core of the planets, there's the surface temperature, there's the atmosphere, there's they basically all have 6 atmospheres, at least that's how we label them. We have things like the troposphere, the heliosphere, the stratosphere. Like everybody's like, what's with all these spheres? And you're like, I know it sounds silly, but there's more than one atmosphere the way that we like to look at it. And again, from my perspective, I consider it there's 6. I actually mention them in my books for reasons I won't go into.
Well, the planet on your book is basically a planet that you kind of just created for the book, right? You weren't thinking of another planet. You just
right. I felt it best that for the purpose of my storytelling, that the planet on which the dragons that you're going to read about, you're sitting there reading the books, is not located anywhere in this solar system for sure. Obviously, it's not Jupiter or Mars or, Saturn or whatever. And further, it might not even exist in this universe. Now, I didn't really come out and say, this planet doesn't exist in anywhere. And I don't want to be that ridiculous. Right. Like, it's not important to the storytelling. But it seems clear that when I start explaining things about the dragons, and once I tell you the name of their planet, that you quickly get the idea that it's being compared for you as the reader to things like Saturn or Jupiter, so that you can sort of wrap your head around size and scale. But it's not to say that, oh yeah, Saturn's over there and we're over here and come say hi anytime, Mr.
Now, the latest Diamond Dragon book, because we have to getting towards the end of this show, but I want to let listeners know the most recent one. Is it the 5th book or the 4th?
No, it's the 4th one.
4th one,
right?
And that came out when?
Well, so that one's a little hard to explain, but I'll try to sum it up here. So The solstices are very important to my storytelling as well. And what I decided to do early on in the process, before I even published book one, is I was like, I think I'm going to make my release dates on the solstices. And I remember telling someone about that. I said, I'm going to release the digital versions on summer solstice, and I'm going to do the print versions in the winter. And there's many reasons for this. I won't go into all of them, but that's essentially what's going on. Now, since we're here as of the time of this recording, and I don't know when it'll be posted or whatever, but it is 2024, and we're still in July. We're almost in August here.
Right.
But the point being is that the summer version from June, I think it was June 20th, has been released, and I only released half of Diamond Dragons 4.
Wow.
And I might not release the other half of it digitally at all. We'll see. However, the full version and print versions, the hardcover and paperback, they'll be released on December 21st of 2024, which is the winter solstice. All the other books so far have been summer, full digital version, winter, full print versions and whatnot. So I did Diamond Dragons 1 in 2021, 2 in 2022, 3 in 2023, and so forth and so on.
Oh,
I will probably finish the series in 2026. I basically have planned only for 6 books. I do have some ideas that I might do 7, 8, and 9, and 10, 11, 12, but I have to tell you, Rick, for what people do or do not know about this type of storytelling, it's an enormous burden. It takes tons of work. At this point, I've now outlined, written, developed, edited, formatted, and
Right.
illustrated and published 600,000 words. And those illustrations, there are over 350 color illustration. Well, color if you get the hardcover version. I can't do it in the paperback because you can't do it that way. But I mean, it's a lot of work. 350 plus illustrations. That's crazy. And they all belong. Like, these illustrations weren't there just to piggyback on things and be pretty to look at. Like, they essentially support the storytelling. They don't need to be there, but it's far more powerful if those illustrations are there. And it's taken an enormous amount of work, especially doing everything alone. I feel I should be clear about that if people are even getting this far into our little dialogue here, is
Right.
that I don't have the support of publishing companies and editors and formatters and this guy, and like, I don't have a team of goblins or something working around me or whatnot. I mean, I've hired some folks to do limited stuff. Like, I have a few illustrators that I've grabbed over the years and said, hey, could you draw a few things? And they've either come and gone or stayed or whatever. And like I said, I hired some composers to do some music, but that's of course secondary and tertiary, or sort of a sideline or an extra benefit. It's clearly not necessary to read the books. But when people see my videos, which give like chapter artwork teasers, or they tease the launch of the books, at that point people can be like, whoa, like, what is this? This is like an entire new world, and what is going on here? And it seems that these books are stronger than just the words on the page. And even though someone might say, well, that's just the author talking, I'm like, go find out for yourself. The website is easy to find. There's plenty of videos for people. There's tons of free content too, so that if people were to read a little bit or to see some videos and decide, I don't want anything, this sounds so terrible, I hate it, that's great. But there's enough content there for people to make their decisions. If they're like, I want to go down this rabbit hole, I want to see, like, well, what is DD1 all about? And then that whole hashtag, what is Armageddon's blood? What is the Solstinox? And what the hell's going on with this thing called the Night Pyre? What is all this craziness? And it's like, well, yeah, find out what the heroes are like, the heroes and villains. And I will end with this: is it's terrible for me to say, but I really, really like my main villain. He's such an hole. He's so terrible, but he's so intelligent. And it sometimes hurts just to write him, because I'm like, oh, does he have to do this? This is so awful, But it's like, this is what makes storytelling so
I love it because it sounds to me like, see, I do acting, and I would have been, yeah, if I could have been an actor and a musician, I would have, but I couldn't. I had to choose one, as you know. You know, acting is a 24-hour thing.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I do both, but I'm just saying I'm more of a musician because I had to do music 24 hours a day to do the industry part.
Time is the only resource.
Yeah, but the acting thing, I love the idea, and I'm just like sensing this, but I just sense, because I love to play a person that I would never in a million years be, and so it was always frustrating to me. I still do acting stuff now, by the way, and maybe even more in the future as I complete many of my musical, goals. But I just remember being in one, acting things where it's like the most fun for me is to play, like really the absolute most prejudiced,
Like villains.
yeah, villain types. The real prejudiced Southern, like these horrible slave, whatever it is, to play that. I mean, I played a judge who was a biased, racist judge. You know what I mean? But I loved it because I was able to do something that I wasn't, and so I'm just imagining you like, the machinations of this villain character.
Well, and part of it is too is
vicariously.
I've in some of the videos I've recorded some of the voiceovers and how do I say it without going into something, because I know we gotta stop here soon. But
Right.
people can look up the videos and they will see and they will hear. They'll be like, "Oh, wait, is that guy? That's the author doing the voices of some of these characters." And it's like, yeah, that's also me. Also, I want to give a shout out to my young daughter, Caitlin. Her artwork is at the back of all of my books. I've done that on purpose.
Ooh.
But also, when I'm reading to her, I'm always doing as many of the voices of the characters as possible. And then the main villain, whose name is Nitrozite.
That's the one that you're.
That's the idea, right? You would expect a bone or ghost dragon to have some type of gnarly, grizzled voice. So,
Great.
right, the idea is to dip into that sibilance, like
Right.
if he's a snake, right? You want that kind of feeling.
Definitely.
Obviously, villain voices are crucial to making not only a hero's journey awesome, like Harry Potter or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, but the idea being is there's a distinct difference in the hero's voices and those of their companions, but also for certain the villains.
Right. Well, folks, you've got it right from the voiceover man's mouth. I mean, great voiceovers there. I really enjoyed that. So the email address, it's on the Diamond Dragon website, right? Okay.
Yeah, diamond-dragons.com, and all of it is there. I think people will have more than enough to browse through, and they can take their time on whether they're like, wait, I want to go down this road. I want to read a Tolkien story or Tolkien story style story that will traverse more than one book. They can just read one book and be done with it, but then they will miss out on essentially what ends up being this Armageddon's Ballad. Like, what is that?
Right. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we've had a great time here with Matthew. Diamond-dragons.com. I suggest you go there. Just enjoy yourself there. There's a lot of stuff, as he told you. There's a lot of interesting things, even animated things. Go there, enjoy it, and dip your toes in that water, and maybe some of you will get to that amazing the discovery of that musical work as you progress through the Diamond Dragons trilogy or story. It's up to 4 or 5 now. But we want to thank Matthew again for joining us, and we want to thank all of you for sticking with the Jazz for Peace podcast, where the final solution is love.